right, welcome everyone. Today, my name is Darcy Tecalero. I'm a volunteer for the NFA, and I'm also a student at Vanderbilt College of Music here in Chicago. And today we have Emily Boschen. So without further ado, I will let her overtake this session.
Awesome. Thank you, Darcy. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Oh, maybe.
Is it not letting you share your screen?
No, it is not. It says that
Here,
it's
let's
disabled.
see if I can help you with that.
I think I got it.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Today I will be talking about A Flutist, Vade Mecum, kind of giving a crash course on the entirety of the book. I'm really excited that you all joined me today, and this is going to be an interactive session. So if you have your flute with you, feel free to play along. You can go ahead and get it out if you haven't already. But first, go ahead and put in the chat what your experience level is with the Flutist Vade Mecum, whether you play through it almost every day, regularly in your practice sessions, or if this is a book you've never even heard of. It's totally fine. Everybody is welcome here for your experience. We'll just kind of went through today. Take a couple of minutes to do this. Awesome. It kind of looks like we have kind of a mix. We have some people who've never used it, own it, and kind of use it sometimes to really practice it. Awesome. I'm glad that and thank you for people who came on who have no experience with it. I hope you gain some experience with it today. First, a little bit about me. I am based in the Kansas City, currently second symphony orchestra, finishing up my master's degree at the University of Kansas City with my undergraduate teacher, Helen Blackburn at A&M University, introduced me to the book in high school. And I admit, I was the person that bought the book and it sat on my shelf for a really long time before I actually started using it. And so, but now I'm really glad that she motivated me to start using it early because it's one of my favorite books that I use daily. So a little bit about the author of the book. Walfrid Kujala was the principal piccolo of the Chicago Symphony from 1958 to 2001, and he also taught at Northwestern University at that time as well. He's written multiple books, including Of Flutist Progress and Orchestral Techniques for Flute and Piccolo, which is also another great book. I recommend that one. And he also was a past president of the NFA and a recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award in 1997. He wrote this book in 1996 and he re published an expanded second edition in 2012. That's probably the edition that most of us have, the big blue one. And Vade Mecum means go with me in Latin. And from the beginning of the book, he has this really long foreword that kind of goes into how he wrote the book and why he does some of the things he does. And he says, this book is intended not just for the initial learning of scales and arpeggios, but for permanent and ongoing improvement of this material through diligent review. Think of this Vade Mecum as a steady companion, always available for review and renewal. So this is intended for people who are getting started kind of with their technique, or people who are professional flute players and just need to kind of keep up with their scales and techniques and tone studies. There's all kinds of stuff in this book that we'll dive into today. Um, so it's kind of for a little bit for everybody, which I really appreciate. I put the website for his publishing company on the slide. It has, you can buy the book from his publishing company, but most other flute stores have this as well. Okay, so one thing that is kind of special about this book that he kind of talks about is there's different fingering codes throughout the book, and we'll talk about them as we go through each section today, but I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of an overview before we get started. Each of the letters at the top represent a different key on the flute. So C is low C, B, low B key, and he goes through different letters throughout that. Those are the ones we're mostly going to see today when we go through some of the sections. And then when he adds numbers like plus 1, 2, 3, that means add your right hand down 1, 2, 3. And then if he puts an L in front of it, that means your left hand. So I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen just for a second so I can show you one of the fingerings that he kind of created. Okay, so one of the fingerings he created was -4 plus 3, which means to take your pinky off on your right hand and leave your third or your ring finger down. And my teacher, Helen Blackburn, calls it the Wally after Walfrid Kujala, and so if I ever call it the Wally, that's why. So he uses that sometimes, and most of the time he uses it from when you're going from a D to a C to D, E, kind of like between D, C, and B a little bit more. It just adds a little bit more stability with your right hand. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen real fast. Around this side. Okay. And then one thing that's really cool about this book, that's really what we're going to dive into today in this session, menus. So these are not actually in the book. They are on the website, and in order to make it through, it's a rather long book. Got it before. Each one of the practice menus today. So there's 12 keys, and he practice menu key. You get through the entire book in 12. So personally, it's about 6, and so I can get through the entirety of the book every 2 weeks because I actually have practice these laminated, and so I can just look at them so I know, like, okay, I just finished number 1 on page 13 and 14. Number 2 is on page 31. And so we'll go through the C practice menu today and play through most of it. Some of it skip just for time purposes. I want to make sure we have time for questions at the end. So if you have questions, kind of remember so we can save time at the end. But if you don't have your flute already, go ahead and get it. How this will work is I'll go ahead and play along with volume up, and everybody else can play while they're muted.
Oh, Emily, before you continue on, it seems like a few people in the chat are saying that your audio is cutting off.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. I don't know if I can fix it. Let me pause the recording. Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Okay, so before we kind of took a little break, and so you can go ahead and get your flute out if you want to play along. So let's start with the first section of the practice menu. This beginning part of the book is the first 13 pages of the book. It's titled Basic Scale Arpeggios, and base the entire book off of this. It's a part of the book. And it starts with intervals for each of the sections into then minor scales, major thirds, minor thirds, whole scales, max scales, a little bit of everything. So let's go ahead and play a little bit at the beginning with the intervals. It's still not working. I have everything turning off internet and I have an Ethernet cable, so I'm not sure what else to do.
Emily, are you using an external mic or your computer?
An external mic.
Maybe just try unplugging that and just use your computer mic and let's just see if that helps.
Okay. Okay. Let's see if that works. Let's start at the beginning. We'll just do the first couple of measures of the intervals. I'll go ahead and count us off. 1, 2, 3, go. 2, 3. Does that seem to be a little bit better with the sound? Okay, so we'll just lose the other microphone. We'll forget about it. Perfect. Okay, so these intervals are really nice to play with a drum. We won't do that on Zoom today, but I usually play these with a C drum. And then on measure 2, you see how there's a bracket and then the letter C. That kind of goes back to the fingering chart that we talked about before. And so he's suggesting that you leave your low C key down when you have the C octave. Let's go ahead and jump down to major scale just for time. And so we're in the key of C major, so we have no sharps, no flats, and then we'll go ahead and go directly into the natural minor scale. And so we're going to add 3 flats to our key signature. So now we have B flat, E flat, and A flat. And the fingering suggestion he had for this is to use your thumb B flat for all the B flats in this scale. And so he has that written with the T with the bracket going around it. Ready, go. And then on the next page, we're still in the basic scale and arpeggio part. We go into harmonic minor scales and melodic minor scales. Whoops, I'm sorry. I'm going to go ahead and skip over those just for right now, just for time purposes. Let's do jump down to the broken thirds. We start with the major broken thirds and then do inverted major broken thirds. But I wanted to point out something really fast. For the majority of this first C section, we're slurring everything or slurring in groups of 4, but for each different key and different section, we change the dynamics and the articulation marking. So on the in the next section, when we do the F major version of this, he has we slur the first 2 notes and then tongue the next 2, and so each different key you're getting a different articulation and different dynamic markings to kind of help round out your flute playing a little bit more. So for right now, let's try the inverted major broken thirds just to challenge ourselves a little bit. And we're at a nice, comfortable mezzo piano. So try to, when you're practicing at home or playing at home right now, try to aim for your mezzo piano sound. 1, 2, ready, go. again in this section, the second measure of this section, you see how he has, whoops, I don't know why my slide keeps changing. Sorry about that. He has a plus, it looks like a plus 12, but it's actually plus 1, 2. And so he's saying when you go from D in the staff to C in the staff, you can leave your first and second finger of your right hand down. And so after you do the major broken thirds, you have minor broken thirds and inverted minor broken thirds. We're going to go ahead and skip those for right now. And then next in this section, we have some triads. So we start with diminished, and then we move to minor, then major, and then augmented. Sorry, I didn't catch that. Did someone say something?
Earlier this week, I caught her playing with a candle flame. Then she reached her paw after it came out. She dipped her paw into the hot wax and just had like wax all over her. She's trying to kill herself. Hey, girl.
Okay, make sure you're muted for right now. We're going to go ahead and continue with the triads. Let's just do major and augmented triad. So our major triad, we have C, E natural, and G natural, and then augmented, we have C, E natural, and G sharp. So let's try to play those two measures. Ready, go. The next part is a whole tone scale, and so it's just made up of whole steps, and this one he suggests that we use thumb B flat for our A sharp fingerings. Let's try this part. Ready, go. The next part is chromatic scale. We all know our chromatic scale. And so, but this time he has it written at pianissimo. So let's try to do our best pianissimo when we play our chromatic scale. Ready, go. And then we'll have a diminished seventh chord and then a dominant seventh chord, and then it'll go into my head for the next section. So let's move on. So this is the first section in the practice. This would be section number 1. So next section when you will be number 2, which is triads. So first on the page, you see that there's the block chords at the bottom, C diminished, and C minor, C major, and then C augmented. And then what you're supposed to do is take the board and play that triad with this exercise. So there's no accidentals marked through the section. You're just supposed to know which playing through. So let's do C minor this time. So we're playing C natural, E flat, and G major, or G natural, sorry. For the first one, let's just do just the first line, the triplets in C minor. Ready, go. And then just to make sure we understand about the block, so let's go ahead and play C major. So we're going to play the same line we just did, but with C natural, E natural, and G natural. Ready, go. So you will do each of the 4 different triads as the block chords throughout this whole exercise. Let's go ahead and move on to the next section in the practice menu, which is triads in open position. So this one is, instead of just doing, it's doing a triad over 2 octaves. And so we start with the tonic, and then instead of moving to the 3rd, we move to the 5th and then the 3rd. And so it spans over 2 octaves instead of just 1. Let's go ahead and do this whole exercise. And then you can see there's a lot of -4s over the different measures. And that just means to take your pinky off. It says fingering suggestion just when you go from a low C to either G flat or G natural or G sharp, you can lift up and take your pinky off for that note to move it over to play the E flat and the E natural. And then this is another one where it's not necessarily the goal to play faster, it's kind of more as a tone and flexibility exercise. Ready, go. So that's the 3rd section in our practice menu. The next section is 7th chords. It's the same idea as the triads that we just did. You see measure 15 at the bottom is this block chords, but now they're 7th chords instead of just normal triads. And you're going to take each block chord and play it through the entire exercise. Let's do C dominant, so the second one. So we'll play C natural, E natural, G natural, and B flat for our 7th chord. And let's do the first measure down through measure 6. So the first measure, 16th notes, and then all the triplets. Ready, go. And then you would do the same thing or the whole exercise with all the 4 other chords as well. This is really similar to the triads exercise a couple pages back. So the next section on the practice menu is a tone study based on the opening of Beethoven's Symphony No. 1. This one's kind of harder to explain in the context of just doing 2 lines for the practice menu. Really, the whole study is built upon the last sections, and so once you finally get to the very end, it's kind of where it all starts to make sense a little bit more because it becomes the exact first flute part for Beethoven's Symphony No. 1. But let's just do the first line in this one. This is a really great kind of to open up your sound first thing when you start playing. I also use it as a vibrato exercise to use with the analysis tab of the Tonal Energy app. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, but it's a great tool. It actually shows you what your vibrato looks like with the waves. And so it's a really good tool to use, especially for this study. So you can see how your vibrato changes as you start from a really soft dynamic and crescendo and then decrescendo. Let's try just the first line, the line A. Ready, go. So again, this one's kind of hard to explain and really fully grasp as since it's just the first two lines of the whole exercise. But hopefully if you have the whole book at home, you can see that the rhythm starts to change, and he adds some forte pianos in there to kind of do a little bit more practice with your vibrato and dynamics. So the next section on the practice menu is La Scala Kujala. This is just different ways, different patterns, scales. So let's go ahead and the major part of the you can have some penciled in that you can kind of see this and really come out clean. But in the back of the book, he goes each section, some commentary about each section. And one of the things about this particular section is once you feel more comfortable with your scales and section in particular, you can kind of challenge yourself more and play section 1 in major or your brain in pure and bass clef. It's not really a scale if you read this in clear but it kind of challenges your a bit more to think harder when you're practicing music. So let's try this whole lines, the whole section. We're in C major. You can see that Wally fingering we talked about earlier on the fingering code slide is right there in measure 4, and that's what the -4 3 is. And so you'd use that from D, the last measure 3, the last note of measure 3, to B, C, D again. Ready, go. So for each of the sections on the practice menu that you do La Scala Kujala, you do about 4 different keys. And so it starts with major and then it goes to minor, and then you get a little bit of whole tone scale practice too once you get to like B and G. But for right now, let's go ahead and move on to the next section on the practice menu, which is my favorite in the whole book, extended intervals attaining defter fingers and a more supple embouchure. So I'm going to be honest with y'all. I used to hate this section a lot. Now it's my favorite, but it kind of was like broccoli to me. Like I knew it was good for me, but I really didn't want to do it. Just like eating your vegetables. But now I have really seen like how it has helped my flute playing, not just with my fingers, but also with my embouchure, making it more flexible. And the reason it kind of does that is because it picks a note that's the tonic. So this first whole number 1 section is E flat, high E flat is the tonic. And then it starts doing chromatic patterns, and then whole tone, diminished 7th, augmented triad, perfect 4th, and perfect 5th. So it gets wider and wider as you go down. And then, so the next section, number 2, I'm going to switch to the next slide really fast just to show. Number 2, it's the same idea, but starting on E natural. And it does the same thing. So you kind of start on every single note, and you get to do 2 whole sections of these for each practice menu you do. And it's really good to start practicing slow in the beginning, just to kind of work up the flexibility in your fingers and your lips to attain these really wide intervals that you get down perfect 5th. So let's do this whole exercise, and then as we go along, I'll talk about some more advanced things you can do once you get more comfortable. For right now, let's do a continuous slur across the bar as written, and you're actually going to repeat each measure twice. Ready, go. Let's do the whole tone now. Ready, go. So let's pretend that we're a little bit more comfortable with this exercise. And something that I like to do when I practice Vade Mecum in a group of friends is that we stand in a circle, kind of like doing scale circles for other books. And for this exercise in particular, we pick a different thing to modify each line. And so sometimes we change the articulations, sometimes we change the dynamics, sometimes we think in tone color. So it's like, think of this one as pale yellow, which is kind of interesting to see when you practice it with other people, because everyone's interpretations of tone colors and stuff like that is a little bit different. So it definitely makes this one a little bit more fun to practice. For this diminished seventh one, let's try tonguing everything with the staccato tongue. We'll go the same tempo. Ready, go. For augmented triad, let's try doing our softest pianissimo. Ready, go. For perfect fourths, let's keep slurring it just like we did, but try to think what color red would sound like if you were to play it on the flute. And for this last one, perfect fifths, try to think of something by yourself to play with at home, a new different way for you to challenge yourself. I'm going to do slur 2, tongue 1, and then when I get to the 16th notes, I'm going to do slur 2, tongue 2. Ready, go. So for each section on the practice menu that you do this, you'll do 2 of these larger numbered sections. So today we're just going to do one of them because this is one of the longer exercises, but I really definitely highly recommend you don't skip this one. It's like eating your vegetables. It's really, really good for you. And after a while, you can kind of, once you're more comfortable with it, make it a little bit more fun for you. Sometimes when I'm depending on the repertoire I'm working on, if I'm like, oh, I really need to work on my softer dynamic, so then I'll do the whole thing at a really soft dynamic to challenge myself. Or it's like, oh, I really need to work on my double tonguing, and so then I'll tongue everything with a double tongue. So you can kind of make this one work for you a little bit more. So the next section on the practice menu is chromatic expanding intervals. And we're actually not going to play this one because I feel like we've all played our chromatic expanding intervals. For this one, you're going to do a chromatic slur the whole time, or a continuous slur. Sorry, I read that incorrectly. It's a continuous slur. And then you can see like on the first line, he has L4 over that measure, the fourth measure. And that means you can just leave your left hand pinky down or your G sharp key. And then at the end of the second line, you can use the Wally fingering again. So let's go ahead and skip to the next section on the practice menu, which is alternating major or minor and major thirds. And we're going to go ahead and skip this section for right now too. And we'll just talk about it. Again, this one is a continuous slur. And with this one and the last one, he says you can do a continuous slur, but once you feel more comfortable with it, you can always change the articulation and dynamics and things like that to challenge yourself. In this one, even though it's not marked, he does say to play each bar twice. So next on the practice menu, we have compose accelerandos. This is also a really fun section to do. Typically, I would practice this with the metronome. We're not going to do that today, but you're going to do just a C major scale. Once you feel more comfortable with this section and you want to challenge yourself, you can start doing C minor scales. And so sometimes when I do my practice menus, I do the first round of all 12 of them major when I get to this section, and then the next round when I come back again, natural minor, and then the next round I'll do harmonic minor and then melodic, and so kind of just to mix it up a little bit more. And not every scale that we play in our repertoire is always going to be a major scale, and so it kind of helps you be a little bit more versatile with your scales too. A couple notes about this, and we'll just go to letter B. It starts out in half notes, and then it goes into kind of measure 2 looks a little funky. And so in your mind, you're going to be subdividing triplets for that bar. And so actually when we play this, I'm going to tongue straight triplets in that bar just to kind of show what your mind should be thinking when you play that bar. And then the same thing in measure 3, you should be thinking 16th notes. They're just tied together. Each note is going to be 3 16th notes long. And then in the 5th measure, the last measure of the first line, you're back to triplets, and you're thinking 2 8th note triplets per beat, or per note, sorry. So let's go from the beginning to the big letter B in the middle. Ready, go. And then if you picked up where we left off at letter B to the end, it's just the opposite of what we just did. And so not every section, this one he has written out like measure 2, 4, and 5. He has written out what you should be thinking in your mind as the subdivision. But for some of the other ones, he doesn't write it out as clearly. And so I just wanted to clarify that just a little bit. Once if you get the book and you look at it and think this rhythm looks a little bit different, the C major section, he actually writes out the expanded rhythm a little bit more. Okay, so the next section on our practice menu is trill drills, and we're just going to do 2 of these lines. We're going to start at letter C because not everyone may have a B foot joint, which is totally fine. And so this is a really good trill exercise. I'm going to be completely honest and say that my trills are not something I often look forward to practicing, but it's still a really important part about being a flute player because we have lots of ornaments we often have to play. So let's just do lines C and D. And so in the first measure, we have a quintuplet. And so it's basically just one turn of the trill and then the appoggiatura. And then the second measure, you have 2 turns of the trill. And then the third measure, you have 3. And then the last 2 measures, you're just doing a trill for a half note. And so you're going to repeat each bar twice, just like he has written out. And so let's try line C. Ready, go. Whoops, I just messed up myself. I'm going to start over. I didn't repeat the bar. Let's go ahead and repeat, like I said. Ready, go. And then let's try line D. We're trilling from D to E flat, so we'll just wiggle our pinky. Ready, go. So you'll do so many of these per practice menu, and then it actually you'll cycle back once you get to the end, and then you'll start at letter C again, I think, or maybe yeah, I think it's at letter C, but you do an up an octave, and then you'll cycle back again once you get to the later practice menus, and then you'll go up 2 octaves. So you really practice every single trill on the flute if you do the entire set of practice menus. Okay, so the next section on the practice menu is broken, fourth, fifth, and sixth. And these are actually the next 3 sections, but they're all kind of are the same thing. So we're going to start with force, and we'll just do the ascending force, or not the inverted force, the normal force for today. And this is another section where you can challenge yourself and change the articulation that he has written, or you can play minor fourths or in different ways to do that, kind of like you can do with the other sections. We'll just play normal C major fourths today, and we'll do the printed articulation, the slur in twos. Ready, go. And then you'll do the inverted force, but for time purposes, we're not going to go ahead and do that today. Let's move on to fifths, which is the same idea, but now we're doing fifths. Let's do inverted fifths this time. So we're going to start halfway through the second line and measure 7 on the F natural at the bottom of the staff. Ready, go. And then the next section on the practice menu is sixth. And so we'll go ahead and skip this just for time to make sure we have plenty of time for questions at the end. I've seen a couple of questions fly in through the chat, and I'll make sure we have time at the end to address them all. But the 6, you can do the same thing. Once you feel more comfortable with them, you can change the articulation and the dynamics, and you can try it in minor 6th as well. So the next section is miscellaneous interval studies. We're going to go ahead and skip this one for right now, but for C major, it's whole tone broken thirds that you'll play. And it actually changes with as you go through the other practice menus, and then it turns into chromatic scales and quintuplets and septuplets, and it changes the articulations for those two and starts on different notes. But the next part in the practice menu is pentatonic scales, and we'll go ahead and play some of these today. So we'll do A, B, C, and D, and a pentatonic scale is just 5 notes out of the scale. And if you can see, each measure is a different articulation pattern, and it's a different pentatonic scale, so you kind of are getting a little bit of different practice with each of these, and then you can also vary the articulations when you practice these as well. So let's start at letter A and go through letter D, and we'll take a break in between each one to kind of regroup. Ready, go. Let's do B, ready, go. And C, ready, go. And then D. Ready, go. So for the C major practice manual, you'll do half of the pentatonic scales that are in the book, and then for the next day, which is F, you'll do the other half, and then this changes into blues scales, octatonic scales, Hungarian minor scales, and then finally modal scales, and you'll do that for quite a few practice menus. And I don't know of any other book that has all these different kinds of scales. And even when I first got this book, I was in high school, and so I hadn't really had college theory yet. And so when I was playing through these, sometimes I'm like, I don't know what I'm playing, but I guess I'll find out someday, and I did. But maybe be a little bit better than high school Emily and actually look up and read in the back what these scales are, and because it makes a lot more sense once you know what you're playing. Okay, so the next part on the practice menu is scale top. These are the ones at the beginning or top of every, in my opinion, the hardest part of a scale. Even just talking about the tops and having them in different ways like this. What you're doing is the top is a tonic, kind of on C, the major, Dorian mode, a minor scale, natural, whole tone scale, those scales. So we're gonna just do a this. Let's do 8, second line from the top. So we're C in the, and we're gonna slur groups of 3. And when you're gonna play each bar twice, it says that, but it's not like it is in some exercises. We're gonna go ahead and slur or play each bar twice, each different kind of scale. So pay attention to different notes, specifically minor, because up D and E natural, it's D, E natural, and then going down it's E flat because it's the minor scale. Okay, a little bit slower on this. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3. Repeat. So each section, this tonic on F part, you start in the lowest octave of the flute, the first octave, then the second one, and then go up to the third octave. And that is how it is for each tonic. And so for each practice menu, you're going to do 2 sections that are a different scale. And so you would do this whole page that's on the PowerPoint slide for the C major, or the C practice menu. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next section for right now, but eventually after you get through all the 4-note scale tops, you'll move to 5-note scale tops, and it's 16th notes instead of triplets, and he varies the articulations with that as well. We're almost to the end of the practice menus, guys. Okay, second to last one. All of the very end, it's the studies based on typical chord progression. So each one, this is in C major, like the practice menu key we have for today. So we start with a 1 chord, and then a minor 6, minor 3, major 4, dominant 7, and then back to a major 1. So let's go ahead and play this whole one. Ready, go. practice menu, it does the same harmonic progression for each key. And it's always slurred in sixes, but you can change up the articulation with this one as well. So finally, the last section of the practice menu is my favorite. It's kind of like a short little treat at the end to treat yourself after you worked so hard through the entire practice menu. And this is a short etude based on chord progressions from prominent orchestral passages that Kujala wrote. So at the end of each practice menu, you'll have two of these etudes that you can do. So both of the ones for the C major practice menu are from Haydn symphonies. We'll just go ahead and play number one for right now, but they kind of get more fun. It has some Beethoven in there and other really good etudes that he's written that are kind of fun to play after you worked really hard throughout the rest of the book. So let's go ahead and play this whole number one section. Ready, go. And that is the entirety of one practice menu. So we went through the C practice menu today, and there's 11 other practice menus for each of the other keys. And so if you do each of those every day, then you'll get through every time you practice, you'll get through the entire book in 12 practice sessions. I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen for right now so I can answer any questions that you guys may have. Okay, let me see. I see a couple questions in the chat. Oh yeah, in the first section, the M's that I wrote in were just different for me to write major and minor for my brain to understand when I first was learning what different triads were. Like, oh, this is a major and then a minor, and so that makes whatever triad that is. And then I haven't looked at the 1995 edition of Vade Mecum. I'm not sure if you can still get that anywhere, but yeah, it is a little bit different with this updated second edition. Oh, and then the practice menus, if you go online, they're not in the book that's printed, but if you go online to the Progress Press website, he has these practice menus that you can print off. I have mine laminated, but you can print them off, and then it has different ways and orders you can practice to get through the entire book. I have the let me put the link to the Progress Press website really fast in the chat. And that's also where you can buy the book online if you haven't as well. Does anyone else have any other questions?
What is the ooh, excuse me, I haven't been talking, I've been playing. What is your strategy for implementing this book like in your lessons with younger students?
Yeah, great question. So I actually start off with just the very first section, the basic scale and arpeggios that we did at the beginning that had the intervals and then the major scales, because it kind of gives you a little bit of a taste of everything in the book and just those first things. That's also what I do if I don't have enough time to like do a whole practice menu every day, because let's face it, we all have those days where we really don't have a whole bunch of time to practice, but we really need to get to the rep we need to look at. And so I'll just do that section with them really slowly for a little while and introduce piece by piece. And it also kind of is a good theory lesson too, because I don't know about them, but I didn't get a whole bunch of music theory in high school, and so it's a really good tool to kind of teach beginning theory to them too. So I just start with that section and then kind of build upon that, and then see as they go on, like, oh, you need some help with vibrato, let's pull out this Beethoven tone study and work on that a little bit. So I kind of just work on it as a little bit. And something I actually did in my undergrad is we had to do, instead of doing like scale tests, like a normal scale test, we did the first section of the book, the basic scales and arpeggio. So we had to play C major and record it and send it to our teacher. And so that kind of was like our scale / technique barrier for the first couple semesters. It's a little more fun to practice than just normal scales.
Cool, thanks.
I see we have a raised hand. David, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, hi. I was wondering, how long does it take to get through one practice menu, would you say?
Yeah, great question. So for me, I've been doing Vade Mecum since I was in high school, and I'm almost done with my master's now. So I can usually do one in 20 to 25 minutes. But definitely at the beginning, it took me a little bit longer than that. And something I think I forgot to mention earlier, because we were having some sound challenges. Something that I did when I did this more in my undergrad in a group of people, we kind of created a streaks thing, kind of like Snapchat streaks, but Vade Mecum streaks. And so, like my streak, I could do a whole practice menu, but some other people in the studio who weren't as familiar with the book, they would just do one row or one column of the practice menu a day, and that would be like their thing, because that would take them 30 to 40 minutes to get through. So it kind of just depends on your ability level and how comfortable you are with it. And then sometimes we're busy, and so I cheat and don't do all of them. I definitely hit the very first section and then the expanding the flexible expanding interval section. So there's certain ones that I always get no matter what. And so it kind of just depends on your routine and how familiar you are with the book. But great question. Thank you for asking that. Is there any other questions?
The link isn't working.
Oh, it isn't? Okay, let me try to resend it. I'm sorry about that.
Well, that's okay.
Let me try it one more time. I got an Ethernet cable for this, and it doesn't seem like it wants to work anymore, so I'm sorry about that. Thank you all for being so patient with me today and my technical issues. Okay, let me try it one more time this way. Okay. Hopefully that one works.
Someone said it's the site, not your link.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's why I can't open it on my browser either. But if you should be able to, if you just Google a Flutist Vade Mecum Progress Press, you should be able to find it, hopefully. If their website is having issues, that's not good. Okay, any other questions? Well, thank you all so much for coming today and spending some time of your Sunday afternoon with me. I really appreciate all your patience, and I hope you got some new information about this book from today.